Welcome to the Energy Transition Technology Chat. I'm joined today by Alex Hern and Antony Duca from Tsunami XR. Guys, welcome and thanks for taking the time to have a chat.
Glad to be here. Yeah, glad to be here.
Alex, for people that may not know you, can you do a quick introduction?
Sure. I've spent the majority of my career in the technology industry in Silicon Valley. I've started a number of startups that have been acquired or gone public. And we worked and incubated this company, started working on this about 4.5 years ago. Made a lot of progress and happy to be here today.
Hey, and if I can ask Antony a quick introduction.
Sure. I have an engineering and computer science background. I've been in the CAD industry for about 20 years, which is quite long, and co-founded a company called Speed, which was a really simple way to take CAD data and make photorealistic images for design, for training materials, and marketing. And that company is owned by Dassault Systems and can be found in the SolidWorks product line.
Okay. So, gotta ask, what are you guys up to with Tsunami XR?
Yeah, great. So we have two product offerings. We have what we call Tsunami XR Workspaces and Tsunami XR Studio. The difference between the two is Workspaces is the simple to use tool for spatial communication and spatial collaboration. So anybody can enter a space, be able to interact with stuff in 3D that don't have experience with 3D technology, for training, for planning, and for sales and marketing use cases. So it's the player, it's the way for people to interact on any device, anytime, anywhere. Tsunami Studio is more of a 3D application where you need to have some basic 3D skills, and it's where you can create interactive experiences and then publish that to a workspace. So if you want to create a training scenario with 7 or 8 steps in sequence that you need to perform, you use our Studio product to create it, and then you publish it to a workspace, and then anybody now can then interact and do that training session.
Okay.
And the key is that those spaces are persistent and they allow for these things called what we call co-presence, which means unlike your traditional way that you have video conferencing or you have training that are one-off applications, you can go back to these applications over and over and pick up where you left off. So, or you can modify them if you say you want to modify the training. You don't have to start from scratch every single time and build an application ground up. You can literally go back into that space and add to it and modify it any way you want at any time.
And one last important thing, when we say any device, we mean any device. So you can enter a space from an iPad, from a phone, you can enter from a PC, Mac, or you can enter from a VR or AR headset. So any device that you have will work with the space.
And that's what I saw when I dropped by your booth at Distributech, whatever, a couple of weeks back, was the demo you were showing was that somebody was sharing, looking out to the camera of an iPad, and they were sharing that, if you like, space with somebody else on the laptop. And then there was a VR headset in terms of somebody could actually be there in a VR environment looking at what the other person was seeing. And, you know, you had this great tagline about the unlimited spatial collaboration and the whole concept of spatial being, you can wander around things, you can mark things up. The way that we work today has changed dramatically.
Correct. And there's what's happened in collaboration to date is just ease of use, right? So you have products that are great today that are telepresence products, right? But those products, what they've done is their innovation has been to make it easier to log on or easier to invite. We've literally taken the time to sort of jump over that and say, if you really wanted to replicate the real world and real world collaboration, how do you do that? But the only way to do that is to do it the way that Antony and his team have built this thing so that 2 people can be in a single place or 3 people can be in a single place, access it from any device anywhere, and truly be as if they were in the room together. I can go work on one thing while you're working on another. We're not handing off the screen back and forth, which is what is typical today.
And you work across all the different devices. So as HTC and Oculus and whoever else out there brings out new virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality headset, whatever the latest and greatest is, you guys do the plumbing behind the scenes so that I can put on whatever and be part and collaborate using that, right?
That is correct. We've built a very extensive framework and architecture to allow, as new devices come online, within weeks to be able to have an experience that takes advantage of that device.
Okay. Now, I've been following AR and VR and whatever for many years, and I always say to people, you know, the only way you can really understand this stuff is you try it out yourselves. So we'll put in links to your videos, and obviously if people see you at the next trade show or whatever, you know, personal opinion, you got to experience this stuff to kind of get your head around the possibilities that collaboration allows, as opposed to, we're all used to the PowerPoint and the sharing Excel spreadsheets, right? This is different.
Yeah. And it's important, though, to note that we wanted to support existing ecosystem too, right? These large utilities and large, you know, industrial companies, they've invested a lot in existing infrastructure. Well, we didn't want to come in and say, hey, you got to scrape that and throw it away. We wanted to be able to take advantage of the existing ecosystem and then add to it as these new devices come onto market and as they explore and pilot and decide, yeah, this is important for this use case or not. But we wanted to be relevant immediately with the existing infrastructure that exists today at these utilities and all across all verticals.
And one of the videos on your, or demos on your website shows that, taking, let's say, legacy apps and systems and having them in the workspace, and I can almost walk around and kind of look at the different screens to kind of highlight that point.
Correct.
Alrighty. So you mentioned the energy industry, and you guys work across multiple industries, but what do you see as, let's say, use cases for your solutions that energy companies are looking at today? What do they find useful?
So we've been very fortunate to work with EPRI and NYSERC, industry thought leaders early on, and that's led to some great work that we're doing, for example, in training with folks like Ameren. Ameren had a particular use case of lock-in and tag-out that was, how do you decommission and restart a plant? And so they had the choice of either going out and building something from the ground up that would only be for that use case, but they recognized the value of our platform and its flexibility, that you could build the thing that you wanted today, but then also extend it as, you know, as needed, as I mentioned earlier. And we've had great success with those folks, and I think there are a lot of opportunities across the entire energy vertical in training. We have an acronym called PILOTS. Mm-hmm. It's Planning, Innovation, Logistics, Operations, and Training. So let me say that again, because planning, innovation, logistics, operations, and training. And so we see use cases across all of those in the utilities.
Now,
vertical.
We're seeing companies moving off from just doing the pilots. They're now starting to deploy these technologies and the whole collaboration in the real world, in production systems. What kind of production use cases are you guys seeing right now?
So one production use case we're seeing in the automotive industry is the product development process for designing a car is quite complex, lots of iterations. It takes many years to get a car to market. And there's a lot of communication that happens on a regular basis. And these groups are all remote these days. So you have folks in Europe, folks in the US, all collaborating to design a car. And so what we're seeing is our product being used to review engineering changes on a regular basis, do it collaboratively either at the same time, but we also have a mode where you can enter the space and you can make notes and changes, and someone can come in later. Since the space persists, someone overseas can come in at a different time and see the changes. And so you can start to have this asynchronous collaboration where you can be working with somebody but not have to be with them at the same exact time, and they can understand what's happening. So we're seeing that as a really powerful use case. And then extending that out to the supplier community. So as they now have a design that they want to start to manufacture, to be able to provide that out to the supplier community and communicate with them on product changes is a really big, valuable use case.
And what's happening, a lot of these global automotives they're taking and consolidating from 20 platforms down to say 4. And they're also seeing China coming online. So they have to design new factories. How do you do that efficiently? How do you make sure that everybody understands every little product or piece of the product that becomes the system that becomes the car? And how do you do that across language barriers, et cetera? Our product even does language translation. So if I'm an engineer in Detroit and I've got someone in China or and even a German engineer that I'm also going to come in to have to chime in, you can literally message that engineer in your language and he gets it in his language inside the platform. So we support over 12 language translations now. So this is truly a global collaboration platform for the world's most complex engineering problems.
You guys are really hitting on the unlimited spatial collaboration, languages and all.
That's correct.
Wow. Okay. And just to go back to the use cases in energy, I know when I was at Distributech, you guys were looking at use cases around folks inside substation automation. There was fleet management, warehouse, all sorts of potentials there, right?
Oh, absolutely. So all of those and more coming. Lots of advantages in training, as we've discussed, but in the field as well. There are going to be lots of things that are really interesting that are coming. You have to train the fleet, right? Also, it's not just fleet management. There's a lot of hazardous stuff that happens in the field. So being able to provide that real-time feel of that, being in that environment is a really important thing, training aspect. And spatial is a big, big deal in the way that people get trained.
And because you work in other verticals as well, are there any use cases or things that other folks are doing in other industries that you're kind of saying, hey, energy industry, utilities, oil and gas, you guys, look at what they're doing?
Yes, so we're working with companies like Schlumberger, as an example. The application there is, so you have these complex frac planning that happens on sites. Today, all that information was residing inside the head of the person that goes out in the field. It drops all the GPS points, plots the site, plans the site, and then tries to coordinate that with people that are not necessarily on that site. Mm-hmm. What they were trying to achieve is a true digital twin, a representation of what's happening on the site that both their customers, because Schlumberger serves people, right? Their customers are the people that are investing in that drilling. They wanted everybody to have a unified, single, real-time view of that space, and that's what we were able to achieve for them. So now, anyone at Schlumberger and any of their customers can see what's actually happening on that site for the first time, and the planning was done inside of the Tsunami platform, where they were able to say, here's where the pumps go, here's where the trucks go, here's where all the different personnel are going to be, here's where we're going to plan everything in real time. And ultimately, you can even plumb in real-time data into those sites. So as this evolves, what you're going to see is real representations of physical spaces. In the case of Schlumberger, there's satellite data, there's Google Earth data, there could be drone data. It's all layered into the space, and then the actual physical things that reside on the site. Now imagine adding to that the real-time data coming off of all the sensors on the IoT side in the field, and then being able to see that from anywhere. So now a customer gets a real view, and that data is not living inside a field worker's head. It's now shared, and there's a record of it in the organization.
So would I be correct to say that you're taking the whole concept of the digital twin and almost making it a virtual object, or a visual object that I can share, collaborate, I can scribble on it, you can comment on it? That's
correct. And then the applications are, again, that acronym. In their case, it was the P, it was planning, right? But that same thing that you've built now for planning can also be used for training. Because if I want to familiarize a person on that site and the safety issues around it, I can now put them in VR and walk them through the actual digital representation of the site, as opposed to have to build a separate application for that. So you can copy paste that environment, yep, create a new one, and then use it for the T in pilots, which is training.
Now, it's probably 4 years ago when I started looking at people starting to use AR way back in the Google Glass days and whatever. And almost every energy and oil and gas company I know on the planet have had pilots and tests with AR and VR and whatever. But it's fair to say that it's not exactly mainstream technology. Every worker out there today in the white truck doesn't have a headset. Why is that? What's been slowing us down?
I think part of it is, it's not just a magical end-all, fix-all. it takes time for large organizations to, understand the use cases. They have workflows that they've adopted for years. They're not, innovation is important, but they don't want to throw things in that are going to disrupt the way they do things. So we've been in this sort of testing phase. That's number one. Number two, the devices have been evolving, right? Just the generation to generation, they're orders of magnitude better than the last. The third thing is you have to deal with bandwidth issues, right? You're not just going to go walk around. We drop phone calls all the time. Now imagine you have mission critical things, right, that you're doing, right? That somebody's life is on the line if they're working on a power line or something, right? So I think as all these things evolve and 5G comes, it's going to get better. I think that a lot of the augmented use is going to be in tablets and phones, which is why Tsunami supports them and has made them a priority across everything, because all of those issues are well known and worked out. And so there's a lot of advantage to doing augmented on those devices. There's a lot of ubiquity. There's billions of them in the field, so people don't need to invest in new technology. But I do believe that, because we see it, right? We were at the cutting edge and we get to see all the devices, that great is coming on wearables. It's just a matter of time. We have to get 5G in place. And we also, indoor controlled environments, it's great today, right? Yeah, but if you're gonna really see it like out in the field, et cetera, I think we have to get, a little bit better bandwidth. It's coming with 5G, et cetera, and then we're gonna see some amazing applications in our view.
And it's truly hardware constraint. You have battery life issues. How long does your battery last? If you're outside, the lighting gets in the way of that AR visual experience, and networking latency is a problem. So there's many things that are getting resolved that we're going to see in the next 5 years really come to life.
No, I agreed. And all the ones you've called out, and as you say, with 5G and a lot of stuff coming down the line. The other one we came across, and it's a couple of years ago, was someone said, oh, it'll be great, and we get all the information on the assets put up in front of the user. And the IT guy behind us said, great, which asset management system should we go to? We've got 7. Right. So it was the data, trying to feed the device was the challenge at the back end, as opposed to the headset. So it's evolving. And you mentioned, obviously, using tablets and phones. We've seen Google, Microsoft, Apple, bringing augmented reality type applications to the consumer. Do you see that making it more, your average worker would say, I can use this on my own phone. Why can't I use it at work?
Yeah, I definitely think that what's happening in the consumer world for AR is going to help to create awareness in the enterprise world. This is something that's actually happening. There's a lot of money funding this today, that we should start taking advantage of it. But there's still all the parameters that we just discussed on the previous question that are getting in the way of that. But it's definitely the consumer use cases are going to drive enterprises to start to really come up with a plan to adopt.
Listen, U.S. Army ordering 100,000 HoloLenses from Microsoft was definitely a shot across the bow, right? It's definitely obviously they think that from a simulation environment and a training environment, there are some really interesting things you could do. We have insight to a lot of things that are happening that aren't necessarily publicly available. And I can tell you that there are very large organizations, both federal and non-federal, that see a great advantage over traditional way that you do simulation and training, for example, in aviation and aerospace, et cetera. So for sure, this is all coming. And it just takes time for new technology to become relevant, and we're past that trough of disillusionment, I think, and people are now really starting to, adopt and understand what these devices are capable of, and it takes time. We have a customer, Ford. You may want to explain what Ford's doing with our product, and they're using it for two different use cases. And we're seeing customers that started with pilots of our software actually doing deployments. So that's a good sign as well. But Ford is using it for both design and engineering review, to be able to review the design along the way as they're building the product, and be able to do it with engineers and folks all over the world at the same time. So they can be in Dearborn, Michigan, talking to someone in Melbourne, Australia, where there are 2 different design studios working on the same design. And they can do that all collaboratively in a workspace. They're also using it for assembly line planning. So to be able to plan a workspace and figure out, can I grab that thing?
Can I reach that easily over here? And so designing a workspace that's on an assembly line is a use case, so planning.
I just got back from Houston meeting with a customer I can't name that what they're trying to do is they've got these experts, right, all over the world and top domain experts at what they do. And their biggest issue is how do we get them in front of the customer when we're trying to win the account, right, to differentiate ourselves from the other guy? Or how do we get them to help the customer once we've won the account to give them higher value than they've ever gotten from anybody else? So how do I take that person and multiply them across the world, right, in different places, different time zones, et cetera, without the grind of travel, with being able to give them the information at the right time when they need it at any time. And so we think there are going to be massive applications for our product and use cases like that, as an example. And that's a problem that every company in the world has.
Agreed. And you know, you mentioned it earlier, and one of the things when I saw the product that Distributech was, and you mentioned it earlier, was sometimes we've seen new environments come out where it's like, well, take everything you have and you have to recode it into this new environment. You can take your legacy apps and your screens and your whatever the tools you know and love and use it within your platform, but you still get that, as you call it, the spatial collaboration, even though you didn't recode all the old apps or you didn't change the spreadsheet or whatever, right? So you can, it allows you to kind of a crawl, walk, run into this new world as opposed to I have to do everything from scratch.
I can't be in a competitor's video conferencing software, you name it, best and worst, and explode a jet engine and grab an intake valve and hand it to you, have you turn it around, change the materials on it, leave a note for a fellow engineer across the world that's going to pick up where you left off, and that person can come in to that same space a day later, an hour later, and literally see physical work that was done. And that's the thing that I think that is going to be a game changer for what we're bringing to the table in terms of as an innovation. Sorry about that.
Spatial collaboration. All righty. So, and what have you guys got planned for the next 12 months? Anything new coming from Tsunami XR? Or?
Yeah, so we're very excited about the next year of development and what we've got coming on our roadmap. And so to really take advantage of any device, anytime, anywhere, using as little compute as possible and as little battery as possible, we're very excited about the concept of rendering in the cloud and streaming that to devices. So instead of the device having to do the rendering, which is what it does today, and it renders a workspace, and it works on all devices, and we do it as compute friendly as possible, but it still takes some decent amount of battery. Now you can push that all to the cloud, and all the device has to do is just render out the video stream, just display a video stream, which is much less, much more compute friendly. Every device does video decoding really fast. They're all designed for that. And so we're really excited about that, and we're excited about edge computing and how that's going to push that infrastructure to very close to the device along with 5G. So the notion of any device being able to display a space without having to use hardly any battery is going to truly happen here in the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, we think there's also going to be massive applications in sales and beyond the operational and logistics and training, but people that have to explain complicated and complex stories to their customers. Today have to do it and are limited to the 1 or 2 trade shows a year or traveling to and from. We think that there's going to be massive applications in just sales and marketing of explaining these complicated things that are happening and what you're trying to sell the customer, but actually being able to bring that giant thing with you, right, without having to bring the person to it or you to it, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of applications in that space.
And one other really exciting thing we have coming too is today we have an application that you download and install. It's pretty lightweight, running on most devices as we explained, but we have a web browser version coming. So without installing any software, you can open up your Chrome, Safari, Firefox web browser, and you can interact with a space in a very fast, efficient way. And so you can send a link to somebody and they can just start interacting and training and engaging you in the space without having to install anything.
Yeah, because the limiting factor in a lot of this stuff is, right, you have to train both sides on how to use a platform. But now imagine this is just I'm trying to help you through a problem, or I'm trying to explain a new offering that I have, a new thing that we've added to an existing thing I've sold you, etc., I can now just send you a link. You literally just click on the link from any device, and you're now in this space without having to know anything or do anything, and I can walk you through it. So, as easy as literally that. And that's what we think is going to be a game changer. Every time we've shown the kind of prototype to folks that understand what we're doing, it's a big aha moment for them.
All right, okay. Guys, if somebody wants to find out more about your company, the offerings, where do we send them?
So you go to two places. You can either go to tsunamixr.com and or we're launching our web-based, cloud-based application for general collaboration called meet.com, MEET.com. Both will take you to the same place, but a lot of new information coming over the next 3 months as we've sort of pulled the covers off. We've only really launched the product in late November, and so now we're going to start towards real marketing and a big sales effort, and you'll see a lot more about what we've got to do when you go to those two sites.
Okay. Hey, Guy, I wish you very well. Thank you very much for taking the time.
All right. Thank you.